this practice of Ignatian Yoga, it's exciting on several levels. I mean, on the first level, given what one can perceive to be resemblances and parallels in the spiritual exercises and in yoga traditions of practice, it makes sense that there is a commonality, there is kind of an analogy between the two that means that these can be friendly partners, and that the moving from one to the other, there would be commonalities in terms of attention to bodily postures, attention to breathing, the exclusion of temptations or distractions, observing carefully what one eats, the space one is in, the value of repetition, the value of a concentrated focus, all aimed at some goal of freedom in order to be a certain kind of person in the world. All of this seems to suggest and create a common ground. So I think as an excellent starting point, it makes sense. And then I would say on the, you might say on the more subjective level, that for those of us who live in a multicultural society such as the United States, we know very well that many of the people let's say if one is a priest or a Jesuit, ministers to or engages in conversation, have rich, complicated religious backgrounds across religious boundaries, and that it would not be productive, I think, in the 21st century to say we can have a ministerial practice, we can have a ministry of the exercises, only 100% of one tradition, only 100% Catholic, but rather some sense that people are complicated, that the people who come to us for guidance or meditative practice or contemplation or prayer often have complicated backgrounds, and to be able to reflect this in our offering of the exercises through the ability to say that these are not enemies to one another, but that for instance, yoga and the spiritual exercises have a certain common ground, is also welcoming people with complicated lives and saying, as long as you understand what you're doing, pay attention to differences, observe yourself in the practice, this makes good sense. And then for those of us who are practitioners or committed to Ignatian spirituality, we are not exempt. We ourselves live in the pluralistic 21st century. We ourselves will know much about other religious traditions other than our own. And I think as we find ways to integrate all of this in terms of being faithful Catholic, faithful to Ignatian spirituality, perhaps faithful Jesuits in the 21st century, we bring this to our ministry. And something like Ignatian Yoga kind of sacramentalizes in a way the complexity of our possibilities in a pluralistic society and a pluralistic century.